After staying at 2435 for about 5 years, he moved next door into a similar store, then number 2437, where he continued for 5 more years. It was then, in the year 1898, that Fred T. made one of his big deals in the sewing machine career. He sold his business and the balance of the lease to the company for $1,000. Boy, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. Up to this time, the company had been occupying a store at 1675 Notre Dame Street. But when Fred sold to the company, the latter moved to 2437 St. Catharines. Shortly after this, Fred made a deal for the store just vacated by the company at $20 per month. After 2 years, he moved to the store on the southeast corner of Notre Dame and St. Sulpice, directly opposite the large Notre Dame church. Mr. Desolet, also in the sewing machine business, offered Fred $1,000 for his lease. And again, Grandpa sold out. He continued selling sewing machines as an agent for the Singer Sewing Machine Company at his old stand, 2437 St. Catherine Street. But he was not satisfied with this. He wanted a store of his own. Finally, he found the Blurry Street store, number 67, on the east side, where for the next 16 years he continued selling Singer sewing machines. Fred also bought a home in the nice section of Westmont, and it was here at 373 Oliver Avenue that Hattie died June the 18th, 1923. In 1926, Fred again sold out, this time to a man by the name of Bruce McLaren. Since then, he has been resting on his oars and reviewing a history of 57 years in the Singer sewing machine business. His son Rupert had married Florence Benedict Stewart on June the 24th, 1903, and is engaged in the real estate business and insurance business in Fort William. His daughter Rubra had married Nelson Carfield Coxon on September the 19th, 1917, and is living at the old home in 373 Oliver Avenue, Westmont. Now, mark you, we're talking 52 years ago. So Grandpa has 2 homes, and for several years after retiring from work, he spends his time at either Fort William or Montreal. The journey to and fro was a little too strenuous, however, and for the past year or more, he has made Fort William his permanent home. Here he enjoys the sunshine in a southern room, his daily drive in the car when weather permits, his Montreal star, and letters from Rubra and his friends. So,
Dad, this was written by
Marion.
Annie Marion.
When?
In the year 1934. And Fred Duncan's Masonic history. In 1899, he was made a Mason in the Mount Royal Lodge, number 32. And he's a life member. In 1934, he had then become a life member. 1900, he was exalted to the Royal Arch Carnarvon chapter, number 5, Montreal. And he was then also a life member of that. 1930, Scottish Rite, 14th degree in the Superior Lodge of Perfection. And in 1931, Sovereign Prince of the Rose Croix, 18th degree, Nanabashu chapter in the Valley of Fort William. So that was one of his hobbies, was Scottish Rite and Masons. And there's a little story on Frederick Thomas Duncan, who was my grandfather, your great-grandfather, and these little kids, great-great-grandfather.
Now,
Okay.
the other thing that was sort of interesting, this Rubra, who was the sister of Fred's father, had a terrible nervous problem, mental problem.
She was genius.
She was genius.
Absolute genius.
And anyway, I'm telling you the story.
Not only no brains, but no job.
No job and no brains.
And my father got him a job.
Dad's father did nothing but support them, you know.
So who's this, Mom?
This is Dad's father's sister, Rubra Duncan. And she painted china. Is she the one who painted?
She painted the china.
Well, that was one of the things she used to do. Was paint the china.
But I saw her. Anytime I saw her, she was yelling in bed.
Well, I mean, if you name a kid Rubra, you got to expect that. Eh?
Anyway,
Didn't they have a daughter?
they have a daughter, Audrey. And Audrey, we keep in touch with in Montreal. And she's now in a home.
Audrey, what's her last name?
Clarkson.
Audrey
Clarkson.
inherited some of her mother's
She never
nerves,
married. Nerves.
but none of her mother's
Never married.
real brilliance.
Lives with a man with one arm. And I don't know.
In the home?
Oh, she does.
In the home?
She's now in a home, but she has
With the
been.
man with one arm?
Has been living with a man with an arm, but then she went out and walked on the street and she fell down and she has no money and the government is just.
She has no money?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
no
So
money.
who other people are we related to?
I'm telling you, it's just a terrible, terrible episode.
Yeah.
Awful. And I called her and I talked to
And
her
you
on the
know,
telephone. And, you know,
My
it's so
father used to
sad.
sing over and over and over in his grave.
Oh.
He put her through a stenographic school.
She would say she was going to go and take the courses and she didn't go. Terrible.
He finally got her set up in the Boy Scouts of Canada head office
Give Mommy a kiss.
as a
Go give
stenographer.
Mommy a hug.
And she was there for about 18 years.
Yeah. And she ran a country. But
I
she
don't know.
just is zonked.
It's a sad story.
Very, very sad.
So